Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Friday Health Talk with the Far South Chicago Coalition. My name is Ted Williams. I'm your moderator today, and this is Dr. Tonya Roberson, who is our host for the day. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to her, and then we're going to watch a powerful video about our topic today, which is the Cook County Jail and Prison. So, Dr. Roberson, it is all on you.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. I am Dr. Tonya Roberson, chair of the Far South Coalition's Health and Mental Wellness Committee, and your host for our Friday Health Talk of the Week. The Far South Chicago Coalition is comprised of caring community leaders, business owners, and engaged residents working together to make a change and to create a thriving community. We are one band and one sound. Together, the Far South Chicago Coalition has created 9 key focus areas that we will concentrate on together to help create the Far South Chicago Quality of Life Plan. But we need your help. So please download the link on the screen and fill out our survey to help us complete our Quality of Life Plan. Today we have a great show, and the title, as Ted mentioned, is the Health and Safety Campaign 2020 Focus, Cook County Jail. There are definitely challenges in the correctional healthcare system, and largely correctional institutions are the sole healthcare providers of some of the nation's sickest people. Yet the quality and quantity of healthcare that is provided across correctional institutions remain vague. Although there are several factors that contribute to this problem, today, the prison and jail population across the United States are becoming a breeding ground for the coronavirus, which is sickening thousands of inmates and detainees, as well as the staff and employees that work in the facility. While some measures have been put in place to try to stop the spread of the virus, it is difficult to contain a contagious virus in congregate settings where people are forced to live, work, and eat in close quarters. So now I'll turn to Mr. Ted Williams III, who will play a short video and then introduce our guests.
Over 1,300. The facility is a coronavirus hotspot. 1,300 inmates to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The facility is a coronavirus hotspot with one of the largest clusters in the nation. Matt Finn is live in Chicago. And Matt, we've seen this happen in other cities as well. It is a big, big issue. Good morning.
Ed, cities nationwide are releasing prisoners and detainees, saying that the coronavirus is spreading so fiercely inside of prisons, they basically have no choice but to release people to make room and potentially save lives. The Cook County Prison here in Chicago at one point was considered the nation's greatest hotspot for COVID-19. Detainees are now putting up signs in the window saying, "Don't let us die," and "We matter." Right now, 3 people have already died from the coronavirus at the Cook County Prison, and there are more than 500 cases of coronavirus inside the facilities. 306 inmates, 218 staff that have to go home to their family. The Cook County Public Defender's Office tells Fox News it's holding emergency hearings and has released at least 1,300 prisoners and detainees so far and identified at least 80 more, 8 that are seriously ill. The sheriff tells Fox News the public defender is releasing detainees within certain criteria, some that are elderly, have a serious medical condition, or are considered non-violent offenders. The public defender says up to 90% of detainees in the Cook County Jail are considered innocent, they are pre-trial, and they are being released with the public safety in mind. Ed.
So excited to be back on the track. I'm excited to show you guys how I use my lumen.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this very, very critical discussion. We oftentimes think about many people in our society, and we oftentimes forget those who are incarcerated. The United States of America has the dubious distinction of being the most, having the largest prison industrial complex in the world. We literally have 25% of all people in the world in prison are in the United States. The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution still allows for slavery legally in our prison system. And it is no surprise that there are a disproportionate amount of people of color who are in our nation's prisons. And so this is a very critical and important issue that we're going to be talking about, not just from the national level, but particularly in the local level. Cook County has been historic in our unfortunate ability to incarcerate people. And so we are going to talk directly with a group of folks who works on this issue, who are on the front lines, who are making a difference. I want to go ahead and bring my guest in right now. They are a wonderful, wonderful group of folks, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them now. The first person I want to introduce is Mr. Gregory Chambers. Gregory is a former police officer. If you guys just want to wave, they may not know who you are when I introduce you. That'd be awesome. So you can kind of see that's Mr. Gregory. There we go. All right, Mr. Gregory Chambers. Mr. Gregory Chambers is a former police officer, a law clerk, a health educator on HIV, AIDS, and sexually transmitted infections. Currently, he is an advocate for criminal justice reform and the Restorative Sentencing Act that will serve to provide program sentence credit to certain incarcerated persons for participating in programs designed to restore them to useful citizenship. Welcome, Mr. Chambers. Next, we have Mr. Joe Montgomery, who is down at the bottom. Why don't you wait for us, Joe? There we go. All right. Joe. Okay, maybe Joe didn't hear me there, but Joe is there with the Nike shirt on right there. Joe Montgomery is a family-oriented young man who lives in the back of the Yards neighborhood. He is the, he is a fellow with Live Free Chicago, and he is currently working on a public health campaign to bring awareness to the inhumane living conditions in at the Cook County Jail. I think Joe stepped out for a second, may have had some technical difficulties, but he will be back, I'm sure. Next, we have Mr. Marlon Chamberlain. Marlon Chamberlain, Marlon, you want to wave for us right there, sir? There we go. All right. Marlon Chamberlain is an advocate for people directly impacted by the justice system. Marlon is very active in the community. He's a founding member of the RROCI Coalition, Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition of Illinois, and he chairs the Live Free Advisory Committees. Welcome, Mr. Chamberlain. Now, last but not least, we have Reverend Ciera Bates Chamberlain. She was born and raised on the South Side of Chicago. She is committed to the fight for social and economic justice by strengthening communities through radical theology. Ciera is working with Black churches to create safe, economically viable, and self-sustained Black communities. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It is really an honor to have this conversation with you. It's such an important conversation. And I want to encourage you, if you're watching us today, to like this Far South Chicago Coalition page, to share this information, to share this on your page, to let people know about this important work that is being done. It really, really is critical. We oftentimes focus on what's not happening in our communities, but now we have the group of people who are doing something that I think is worthwhile, and we ought to be telling folks about what they are doing. So I want you to tell us, Mr. Chamberlain, I mean, to tell us a little about Live Free Chicago, and what is the work that you're doing, and what would make someone want to be engaged or invest in the campaigns that you all are leading?
So first and foremost, thank you for having us on. And Live Free is a faith-based organization that works specifically with the Black church to really help and promote organizing to empower leaders or people from the community to address a lot of the issues that we have in our communities. The reason why, or what I would say to encourage individuals to invest in Live Free is that there's a difference, and I've been in this work now for almost 9 years, and there's a difference from being at the table and being a decision maker at a table. And one of the where Live Free's focus is really developing leaders to be decision makers, to be informed decision makers, to know what's happening in their communities, to know which sort of political avenue that they should take to bring about change in their communities. But it's really rooted in the Black church, really getting out in the community and being the church that God has called it to be.
Thank you so much. Reverend Ciera Bates Chamberlain, can you tell us what campaigns that you're working on currently that you'd love for our followers to support? And then I'm going to actually press into this question of the Black church a little further, because it's such an important conversation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the PBS documentary that just came out this week about the Black church. Everybody's talking about the Black church right now, and you all are on the front line of doing the work of the Black church. So Reverend Bates Chamberlain, why don't you tell us a little about the work that you're doing?
Sure. And so I'm happy that one, thank you for having us on today, and I'm pretty sure we'll spend a lot of our focus on talking about the public health campaign for Cook County. But in addition to that, we are launching our ending MSR campaign, which is ending mandatory supervised release. We're also working on a bill to block illegal ownership of firearms. So we, in addition to addressing incarceration, we work to address gun violence and police accountability. So that's the bio bill that we're currently working on. In addition to that, on the firearm side, we are launching a campaign to address gun trafficking. 60% of the guns that come that are used in Chicago's homicides come from outside from the Chicago area. They are coming from Indiana, majority of the guns. So we're working to build a Midwest strategy to address gun trafficking in the area. We're also working on police accountability. So there are a number of initiatives and tables that we're currently sitting at to make sure that we're addressing the balance of, as we're working to end gun violence, and knowing that gun violence also includes police violence, and we have to hold officers accountable to communities. We're a part of several coalitions, and we're also participating as some things on the federal level to address gun violence. And a huge piece that we're working on in Chicago is continuing to push the city on investing more funding, in which we call that the Fund Peace Initiative, of investing more funding into community-based gun violence strategies. So this year, the mayor, and I don't want to take away time from the conversation, but you all probably are aware of the CARES Act money that was allocated toward the police, but we've been fighting for money to be invested in violence prevention strategies, because we know that investing in communities is how we reduce violence. So that's a huge piece to continue to push a public health approach to ending gun violence, which means decentering police strategies, and also investing less money into policing and more money into community-based strategies.
Thank you. Fantastic. Joe Montgomery came back and joined us, folks. He left us for a minute. He said, hey, I can't leave you guys in this conversation. So, Mr. Montgomery, why don't you tell us a little about why this is important, this campaign, why it's important that it's being done from a public health perspective? Like, tell us about your involvement in the campaign and why you think this work is a public health issue.
No, I didn't leave. I had a little technical issue, but I'm a decarceration organizer fellow at Live Free Chicago, and my position is to run this to get this campaign off the ground, bring in people like myself who's been formerly incarcerated and been through these situations and know what it's like to be in that system and knowing that you're getting treated less of a human. And in many situations, it takes a toll on you because you going through these type of things, fighting these cases. It's just so much weight on your shoulders in these type of predicaments when it really shouldn't be. And the folks at the campaign, like public health and safety, is an issue about humanity and quality of life. So, like, if you detained or was detained or know loved ones that have been detained, you should feel how they feel because it's real messed up in that. And then we just trying to bring awareness to this undying system, basically.
All right, so I'm going to stop and ask you all a question that is just a natural question for me, and maybe the audience has it. Can you explain what decarceration is, right? So I saw that the phrase, I didn't want to mispronounce it. I thought that that's what it meant, and I kind of have an idea, but any of you actually, by the way, someone want to explain to me what this decarceration movement, initiative, and program is? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chamberlain. You want to try answer that one?
Yeah. So decarceration means how can we create alternatives to incarceration? Meaning, a lot of times you have individuals who have addictions. I mean, I could name a list of things that people are arrested for, but instead of arresting people and sending people to jail, how can we help people so that people, one, don't end up in jail, but how can we get to the root of a lot of the problems that people face? And so when you think about the South and West Side, I'm 44 years old, and as far back as I can remember, the South and West Side somewhat look the same and has been plagued with poverty for centuries. And so what's happened is we have a police system that is basically somewhat declared war on our communities, meaning we're just locking people up for any and everything. And then people come home, and then there's a cycle because we don't never address the root cause, which is poverty, which is, we're not just saying decarcerate the jails, we're saying promote or reallocate funding to our communities to prevent people from even going into the system. So when we talk about decarceration, we're talking about how can we begin to reallocate funding into more programming, into community centers, into schools, so that we don't have people going in and out of the system to begin with.
Thank you so much for that. I want to move to Mr. Chambers for a moment, because your work is really in the space of criminal justice reform. And the video that we watched at the very beginning of this program talked about the conditions in the prisons, particularly in Cook County, particularly around this question of COVID-19. Can you let our audience know a little about the conditions that you are working to fix and fight, and what is happening particularly with respect to this pandemic?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for having our group. We are delighted to be on the show and have the opportunity to explain this situation. Now, when we talk about the Public Health and Safety Campaign, the Public Health and Safety Campaign is centered around the conditions at Cook County Jail. Those conditions have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, and so our focus isn't specifically about the COVID-19 pandemic, while we do know that that is a serious and major concern, because we know to date that 10 people have died since the COVID in Cook County Jail since the COVID-19 pandemic has arisen. And that's basically about one person per month. And then if you want to include staff, the correctional officers and the sheriff, then that's 15 people have died. That's more than one person per month in that situation. And one loss of life is not acceptable. One loss of life is not acceptable, and 15 losses of lives should not be acceptable. Now, our focus is on, now prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been conditions that have been deplorable in Cook County Jail for years, for ages. People who have been coming into Cook County Jail have been complaining about those conditions, about the safety and the health in Cook County Jail. And even after the COVID-19 campaign has been maintained or contained, those conditions are still going to exist. And what we want to do is we want to have the opportunity to make transparent the inspection process of the Cook County Jail, so that we know that what the sheriff or anyone else is telling us about what's going on inside of Cook County Jail is the truth. We've spoken to dozens of people inside of Cook County Jail, and we've spoken to people who who are outside of Cook County Jail, but who have resided inside of Cook County Jail. And they tell a totally different story than Sheriff Tom Dart. Sheriff Tom Dart tells us that Cook County Jail should be the model for the nation. And with a loss of 15 lives in less than 1 year, I could hardly say or support the notion that Cook County Jail should be the model for the nation.
That's a very, very good point. So this is about political leadership. This is about our current leadership. Can you tell me, I mean, let's just be very honest and frank here. What is it about sort of the current direction of the jail that you would like to see different? What is not being done that should be done? I help our folks understand this because we're voters and we get to have a say-so in terms of who runs these institutions. So what would you like to see being done differently from an institutional and a leadership perspective?
What I would like to see being done differently is, now there is an inspection process in the state of Illinois and in county jails. That inspection process is done by the Jails and Detention Standards Unit that was created by the Unified Code of Corrections. Now, the Unified Code of Corrections created a Jail and Detention Standards Unit and said that this unit shall be run by the director of the Illinois Department of Corrections and shall go into the jails, the county jails, at least once per year, So that can be as limited as one time per year. Go into the county jails to inspect it. This is not an independent inspection agency. This is an agency, a big brother agency. This is the Department of Corrections managing the little brother Department of Corrections. And we think at Live Free Chicago that it should be an independent inspection or independent monitoring committee. Now, if we can establish an independent monitoring committee that can go inside of Cook County Jail and report its findings to the public, then we think that will create a more transparent process. And so that the notion of the words from the people who live there actually make it to the ears of the people who go to the voting polls and place their votes for the sheriff, for the mayor, for the county commissioner, for the Cook County Board president, or whatever office you hold. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to make this a more transparent process so that we know the truth of the matter of what's going on inside of there. Because we do not believe the truth of the matter is that Cook County Jail is a model for the nation.
Wow. I hope that everyone who heard that is sharing this and telling their friends about this. This is very important. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm a former candidate for the Chicago City Council. And one of the things that when I was campaigning about 5 years ago, people used to always say, well, we haven't heard of this, or we haven't heard of you, or we don't know about this. And how come we don't get more voter education, et cetera? This is voter education, folks. This is the kind of stuff we ought to be thinking about right now before it's time to go to the polls. It's not time to start researching what's happening when it's election time. It's time to start researching what's happening right now. And what I'm telling you is that there's a direct correlation between who we elect to represent us and the conditions in our community, in our prisons, in our neighborhoods, etc. And so we better be paying attention. I hope you heard what Mr. Chambers was saying, because he's saying that that line is very clear. And so we must hold our public officials accountable. And we got to start that now, not when election time comes. Mr. Chamberlain, I want to ask you a question specifically around this issue. And then I want actually, I would love for Reverend Bates Chamberlain to follow up on this as well. Why the church? Why is the church important? Why is this a faith-based movement for you? Why is this critical in your work? Why not just do it separate from a faith-based institution? Please explain to us why you have chosen to link to this organization, the Black Church, in these efforts that you are leading.
So I would definitely pass this question to my wife.
Okay.
I think she would be the best person to answer this question.
Sure. Well, you know, it's funny. I have to say this. I saw your names and that. So I said, well, maybe they're related. Maybe I didn't want to assume, but if the cat's out the bag now, if you had told me that was your wife, I would have never asked you the question, bro. I'm a married man. I would have asked her first. So I know how this works.
Yeah, she probably could preach a message about this question. So I'm gonna pass it to her.
All right, Reverend, go for it.
So again, Live Free in itself, our organization is a faith-based organization. So we organize congregations, particularly Black congregations, and we also organize people directly impacted by gun violence and incarceration. I think for me, why I organize within Live Free, because it's not just about this particular campaign, but more so why we organize Black churches. And one, everyone that's a part of the organization, we are deeply rooted in our faith. And that is a guiding principle for us. And some of it, a lot of it even which draws me to this calling of mobilizing the Black churches, because one, not only is it our people, not only are Black churches places where these are large assemblies of Black people organize and gather under a self-interest. And in the Black church, our self-interest, well, in church in general, right? In church in general, our self-interest is, we would say, liberation, spiritual liberation. But then when we specifically talk about the Black church, the Black church was created in resisting whiteness and resisting oppression. And so as we think about now, and even just tying it back to this campaign and talking about decarceration, like that is the founding principles of the Black church, to resist whiteness and to resist the oppression of our people. So that is who we are. And so this is why we organize the Black church.
Thank you very much. Well said. You know, I have to tell you all, I am heart and soul with you on that mission. I have spent many, many years working with church communities, on ministry side, political side, and I can tell you that our churches are a real source for revolution and restoration in our communities, and we have to take advantage of those. And so I kudos to you all for doing that and empowering our communities in that way. Joseph, I want to ask you a question as well, because you were I guess you're kind of representing the millennial crowd here, and you were talking about kind of your experience and your journey. And I would love for you to share a little about, okay, he's having a little audio issue with hearing us. So he just hit me on the message, so he may not be able to hear us. So I'm going to actually skip over that question. And when you can, Joseph, just send me a message and let me know that you can hear clearly, and then I will come back to you on that question. Now, what I do want to ask now as well, I want to go to Mr. Chambers, and I want to ask you this question. If you wanted folks to get involved in the work that's happening here, right? If people are saying, listen, they're listening to this, they're saying, what can we do? What can we do? What would you tell them that they can do to support your work, to get involved in your work, and to educate themselves about your work?
Well, first of all, I would say contact Live Free. We have a website. We have a website. You can contact Live Free. You can contact any of us at Live Free. You can contact me at GL Chambers, livefreeillinois.org. You can contact Joe. You can contact Marlon. You can contact Ciera. You can contact any one of us through that website or through my direct Live Free email. And we'll get connected with you. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll get back to you. Because we are in the process of developing a core base. We want a base. We want foundation. We want 100, 200, 500. We want 1,000 people. 1,000 people to reach out to us and tell us that you support Live Free. You support this movement. You support humane conditions in the Cook County Jail and in society as a whole for everybody, not just some people, not just the people who vote, not just the people who work, but for everybody, because that's what I'm about. I'm about humane conditions for everybody.
You know, Mr. Chambers, that is such a powerful point. We live in a society and a culture where we believe that when someone is incarcerated, they have really relinquished their humanity, that they don't have any rights because of whatever crime they may have or have not committed, right? And we know that to be the truth, to be the case. And so in America, we do everything we can to strip them of humanity, even allowing us to still have in the Constitution the 13th Amendment that says that they are enslaved. I was doing this conversation with my students. I teach at Kennedy King College and across the city colleges now through the COVID. We're doing sort of virtual, and we're kind of dealing with all students. But I was talking to my students about what was going on in Sweden and how the Swedish prison system is infinitely more humane than the American prison system. And it's not that they don't incarcerate people, that they don't there are not consequences for people's actions. There still are. But there is not this idea that we're going to now treat people as animals and that we're going to put them in cages, that we are going to use solitary confinement, which is shown very clearly statistically in studies that it has a deleterious impact on people's mental health. It is really potentially in violation of the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. And so we've seen, and you're doing the work that says, hey, we can incarcerate people sometimes if we need to. But when we do it, let's do it in a humane fashion. And ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, this is such an important conversation. I'm so excited to be talking to you all. You all's work is critical. Mr. Chamberlain, I want to come to you. Actually, let me go back to Mr. Montgomery first. Mr. Montgomery, can you hear me now? Are you there? Can we hear you?
I thought you were asking me a question because I wanted to respond to that question.
Oh, okay. You know what? How about that? I know, because I know what happens when I
was wringing my hands.
Mr. You know what, man? I'm going to I was going to move somewhere else, but you know what? You want to respond? You go ahead and respond, and I'll do my thing later. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, you had a video. When you started this show, you showed a video. And in that video, they said in the county jail system or at Cook County Jail, they said 90% of the people inside, if you believe the statistic, 90% of the people inside are not convicted of an offense, are not convicted of an offense. So what you have inside the county jails, not just Cook County Jail, but county jails across the state and the county jails across the country, you have people who are not convicted of crimes, but they are charged with of offenses. And even if they were convicted of crimes, the Constitution doesn't say you get to treat them inhumanely. The United States Supreme Court said that that people convicted of offenses are not stripped of their constitutional rights at the door. And the Illinois Constitution says that the purpose of punishment is to restore a person to useful citizenship.
Say that again, Mr. Chambers, because maybe people will catch that. The purpose is do what, sir?
The purpose of punishment is to restore them to useful citizenship. So how do you restore somebody to useful citizenship if you're continually oppressing them, stepping on their necks, and holding them down? You can't hold them down. You can't dehumanize them. You can't humiliate them. You have to teach them the right way. You have to teach them the right way and give them the opportunity to thrive. And that's what our system is supposed to be about, not about oppressing people, but about helping people thrive.
Wow. I mean, if I had a mic to drop right now, I would drop it because you hit it on the head, sir. You hit it right on the head. Chamberlain folks, let me bring you guys back in on this, whether it's the husband or wife, whoever wants to go on this one. Can you guys tell me how you got involved in this work and what you ultimately see yourself doing, in an ideal world? What happens down the line with this work that you all are doing, Mr. or Mrs. Either way, I'm fine.
I'll start it off. So I got involved in this work. I was sentenced to a 20-year federal prison sentence in 2002. And in 2010, the Fair Sentencing Act, which was a federal piece of legislation, was passed that really reduced the ratio between crack and cocaine. And we all know the only difference between the two is baking soda. However, a lot of people of color are sentenced to lengthier sentences because their cases tend to be more crack cocaine cases. However, my sentence was reduced from 20 to 14 years, and so I ended up serving 10 and a half years in federal prison. So upon my release, I wanted to get involved because I felt obligated, because there were groups and organizations that were lobbying and really pushing the needle to correct something that was wrong. And so I started working with a faith-based organization, Community Renewal Society, where I really learned how to organize. And that's actually where I met my wife at. And so I'll let her take it from there. But that's initially how I got involved in this work.
Am I off of mute?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I sort of started off from a space of social work. Initially, I wanted to be a clinician. And then someone spoke to one of my professors, and it just lit a light bulb because I've always had a desire to help. And I have a brother that's serving a 70-year prison sentence. So that sort of led me into the space of wanting to work around decarceration work. But in my moment, my aha moment, it was if you can, when you're a clinician, you have the opportunity to impact individuals. But with you, a social worker working on macro level issues, then you have the opportunity to transform the country, transform your communities. So that's what made me look at systems, because I realized that I could help to transform or be a part of somebody's transformation as an individual. But if they're constantly going back into the same broken communities, it's not the person, it's the community, it's the system. And so that led me into organizing, and the faith-based piece came with it because I was an ordained minister since 2013. I'm sorry. I was ordained in 2013 through the Church of Jesus Christ House of Prayer. And being able to marry these two things that were very influential in my formation was key. So I've always organized congregations. I've always been a part of the faith movement since I began to organize, and that's why I believe that I will remain, because my calling is to the ministry. And I do believe that as Christians, Jesus didn't just call us to pray and call on Jesus on the altar 50 million times, but Jesus called us to action. And I do believe that we, as the faith community, we have to be the prophetic voices. And prophesizing doesn't mean telling you got a car coming in a month. Being prophetic means that we're speaking truth to power, and we're here to dismantle oppressive systems.
You guys got me inspired. I mean, not only am I inspired by your work, I'm inspired by this love story here as well, folks. I mean, I got to tell you all, I'm serious, and I know y'all laughing. We got a lot of single folks watching today, and they like, how am I find my boo? And that's you start doing the work of God and the work of justice, you will be okay. I mean that I'm serious. I think when you are in your purpose, things fall in line the way they're supposed to. And so I just love to see, what you all are doing. And that story is so powerful to me because it really is about how do we change the community? And then you got partnership in doing that. And I think it's really, really beautiful. I also want to say about this question of, the faith community and this work. You mentioned this issue of how, these churches are organizing. This is not just an issue for people of faith. This is an issue for people who want to see the communities change. There was a young community organizer on the far south side of Chicago, in the same community being served by the Far South Chicago Coalition, that recognized that the church was the place to go. And he started an organization called DCP, the Developing Communities Project. And that work still continues today in the faith community, in the far south, making sure that there's equality and there's justice. And y'all know what young community organizer I'm talking about, because he went all the way to the White House, and he recognized that power as well. And so you all are doing such important work. Now, we have, ladies and gentlemen, a few comments here. Someone asked about how can they follow Live Free on Instagram. Mr. Chambers, I don't remember if you answered that in your sort of conversation about where they can find you. Also, there is a link to the website, livefreeillinois.org, etc. Mr. Chambers, you want to answer that question and or answer the question, where are we going? Where do you see us going in this movement in the next 5 years, 10 years? So give us the Instagram question first, and then give us a picture of sort of the overall goal on this project. You're muted, sir. No worries. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer the communication to Ciera,
okay.
and I'm going to speak briefly on where we're going with this. Okay. And I told you what we want to do is, and I'm not prepared to speak at length about this, and I would love to come back on your show as soon as we get more details about where we're going with this.
No
but I'm going to tell you where we're going right now. And I mentioned this initially. What we want to do is we want to create an independent monitoring committee with the authority to go inside of Cook County Jail routinely and randomly and inspect it and report its findings to the public. That's it. I don't want to go any further than that. You had me back on another show. We'll talk about that at length.
No, I love it, but but so what does that look like? How does that occur? What can we do to support it? You know, what are you looking for? Is that something that is a legislative issue? Is that a financial issue? How do we get there?
Well, what we're doing is we're doing the legwork. We're building the policy structure, and we don't want to drag the cart before the horse, because I have a tendency to want to drag the cart before the horse. I like to get up. I like to go. I like to go. Then my boss right here, Ciera tells me, slow down. We need to get the base. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop the base. Okay, so I'm going to defer to my boss, Ciera, with the contact information. And then I'm going to ask you to have us back at a later date when we're ready to reveal where we're going from here.
Sir. So I will defer to my boss on this, Dr. Roberson, to see if we can have you back. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. But that's fine. But see, Reverend Ciera, you've been deferred to a lot on this. So I should have been asking you these questions, you know what I'm saying, in the first place. So let me just be quiet and let you go ahead and answer a couple of those questions, because I see that, you know, we got to defer to you on these things. So go ahead.
She's our executive director.
Fantastic.
Y'all are hilarious. So we can be found on, so I didn't mention this earlier, I don't believe, but Live Free Illinois, we are in 4 regions currently. We're looking and praying to build. But right now we're in Chicago, the south suburbs, Rockford, and the Metro East area. So we do have a Live Free Illinois Facebook page, as well as a Live Free Chicago Facebook page. We can be found on Instagram at Live Free Chicago and Twitter. I think that was it. But I also just want to add to what Greg is saying about the base building piece. We have a campaign, and we have some folks that have been directly impacted. But at this point, we want to make sure that as we continue to build and go forth, that it is with people who the most impacted folks are leading the work in the campaign. So we don't want to get ahead of the people. So we're steady including their voices in training. We're preparing for teach-ins, focus groups. So if you know anyone who, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of folks because who have been inside of Cook County Jail, I don't care if you went there to visit. If you can go and you know the conditions of Cook County Jail, please hit us up on Facebook. You can hit us up on Messenger. You can also go to our website at livefreeillinois.org or livefreechicago.org, and you can sign a contact form and we'll reach out to you.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so yeah, we've got folks in the comments section who are giving us the information. We've got all of that. Once again, livefreeillinois.org. We've got the Instagram page at Live Free Chicago. As you said, I'm going to start following you all today. I really am, and I mean that sincerely because y'all are doing some really, really good work. So y'all out there who are watching need to be following Live Free Chicago. And I'm going to tell you this. We are always complaining about what's not happening in the community. We're always talking about this ain't happening, that ain't happening. Somebody needs to, somebody needs to, somebody needs to. Well, somebody is, and they're right here with Live Free Chicago. And so when they're doing that, you know, rather than reinventing the wheel, we ought to be supporting organizations that are doing this. We have a comment here from Deborah Knox, who says that a few leaders and myself, increasing in Christ ministry, go into Cook County Jail every Tuesday in the women's division. We can enter back in. What should we be looking for to report back to you? That's an excellent question. Thank you for that question. Did you guys catch that? She goes in. She wants to know from anyone here who wants to answer, maybe Mr. Chambers or whoever, or you guys want to answer whoever, what should she be looking for so that she can report it back to the folks at Live Free Chicago? Live Free Illinois, excuse me.
And I'm going to push that to Greg and Marlon.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything that you think, if you have an indication that this was wrong, any kind of mistreatment of you, any kind of mistreatment of your team, any kind of mistreatment of the people you go in and talk to, anything that you hear from them, if they say, this is going on, they're telling you this, but this is what's really going on, then that's what we want to hear. We want to hear the real stories. We don't want to hear those talking points from the Cook County Sheriff's Office or anyone else, any other administrators there. And I do want to say something before I finish that statement, is that this by no means and by no way is an attack on Sheriff Tom Dart. This is an attack on the system status quo. That's what this is an attack on. We at Live Free today do not endorse nor do we denounce any would-be candidate for the office of Sheriff of Cook County today. Now, we may endorse or denounce a candidate in the future, but today we are not prepared to make that statement. So this is not against Sheriff Tom Dart. And if you're listening, Sheriff Tom Dart, we are not coming out to get you. This is not about you. This is about the status quo. We do not want the same thing going over and over and over again with looking through rose-colored glasses. We don't want that. We want the truth. That's it.
You know what? That is so important, because I am a firm believer that when it comes to justice, it's not about who's right. It's about what's right. And we get personally, we take things personally. We, people run for office or, people can take things personally. I'm not talking about, even this particular politics. I'm talking about, I've been working in politics for a long time, right? And what I'm saying is that none of this should ever be personal. None of this should ever be about what this person did or did not do in whatever space that we're in. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make life better for all people. And we have to not only come at this with a passion, but we got to come at it with a humility so that we can go forward for what's best, and no matter who's in that seat to do that. And so I appreciate what you said. I really, really value that. And that's what I'm about, sir. And I think that's what the Far South Chicago Coalition is about. That's what the folks on the panel are about. We just want to make life better for the folks who are suffering in this society, who are marginalized. And I have to remind everybody again, America has the largest prison population in the world. We have twice as many people in jail as the Chinese do, and there are 1 billion people in China. We have 300 million people in this country, 1 billion people in China, and we have 2 times as many people in jail as they do. And you can go to jail in China for having a church service at your house. That's how repressive the government is. And yet America, the land of the free, incarcerates more people than any place in the world. And that ought to change. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost done. Unfortunately, our time is it's such a good time with you all I've had. I just want to give everybody a chance to go around and say a final thought to the audience. If you want for people to remember anything about today, what they can do, what you want to say. Why don't we just go ahead? Let's just have a closing thought. I'm going to bring Dr. Roberson back up in a second. But why don't we start with you, Mr. Chamberlain?
I would just close with saying, I think when Greg talked about the restoring piece, when I think about Cook County Jail and I think about my experience and I think about what that did to me mentally, I think if you know like what like people go through sitting in Cook County Jail as far as just the conditions of Cook County Jail and what that does to your psyche, like I would just ask people to ask their relatives, ask them what their experience was like, because as Greg said, this is not us forming an attack on anyone. We just want to create a transparent process to where we can see what the actual inspection process looks like, and then also engage the community to get more involved in the conversation around decarceration and also thinking about alternatives to prison, because I think we've been programmed to think that jail is the only way. And I would just encourage people to get involved. Contact us with Live Free, because we're open to hear different ideas, and we want to work with the folks in the community to create solutions and not just keep harping on problems.
Well said, sir. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, sir. We started off on this campaign and we like the direction it's going. We want to make a difference. We want to have humane conditions in Cook County Jail and even broader. But that's where we want to start. Live Free Chicago is based right here in Chicago. So we have to start right here in Chicago. And we're not limited to Chicago. As Ciera said, we're in Rockford. We're in the 618 area code. We're out in the East St. Louis. We're at Live Free Illinois. But we at Live Free Chicago are starting right here, and we want to make a difference. And we just want you, any one of your audience who's listening, to reach out to Live Free and join our campaign. Help us make this change, because change can happen. Sometimes it happens slowly, sometimes it happens quickly. We're trying to make it happen quickly because lives are at stake. 15 people have died in less than 1 year. I want to leave you with that.
Thank you, sir. That is that's profound and powerful. Reverend Ciera, why don't you go ahead and close us out?
So thank you again for having us on here. And what immediately came to my mind around just closing is, I think a lot of times we're desensitized because we see so many Black folks being locked up, whether it's in the county jail or in the state or federal system. But I'm reminded when Jesus said one of the two greatest commandments is to love my neighbor as myself. And when I began to think about loving my neighbor as myself, I realized regardless of what a person does, it does not give society the right to treat them inhumane. JLUSA has a shirt that says, "I am a human." And it's a crying shame that in the United States, we have to remind people that we are humans, that Black folks are humans. And so my closing statement is to, as we're working on this campaign, that we all participate, calling out to faith communities, Black folks. Our people are being locked up and being treated less than human. They're being treated inhumanely. And let's not allow media or however we've been desensitized to think that this is okay, because it's not. It's not normal.
Thank you. You know, I'm going to bring Dr. Roberson back here in a second, but I know she'll agree. You know, we just, these panels just keep getting better and better. I think last week was phenomenal, and this week is even more phenomenal, and we're going to have you guys back. You all were fantastic. And I want to say, I know Joseph Montgomery was trying to join us, and he was having some technical difficulties. I just want to acknowledge him and thank him for coming, particularly as a young person and sharing his stories. So we'll have him back as well. And I just am inspired, you know, back to the sort of theology question. You know, I know a story of somebody named Joseph who went through incarceration and came out on the other side pretty powerful. And so when I see this young man, I am really excited about his future and hopeful for him as well. I also want to acknowledge Miss Joyce Chapman in the comment section, Dr. Joyce Chapman now, who said thank you to Live Free Chicago. And she is such a powerhouse, such a vital member of the community on the far south side. I am, and I know not only myself, but so many of us are forever grateful and indebted to her for the work that she does and the way that she leads and pulls people along. And so we just want to acknowledge her today as well. And I think Janice Knox is on there as well. And we want to acknowledge her also. Having said all that, you guys, thank you. You all were fantastic. I'm going to bring Dr. Roberson back on in here. And I just want to thank you guys so much for all that that you do, and many blessings to you guys, and we look forward to supporting your work in the future. Take care.
Yes,
thank you again. And everyone, please support Live Free Chicago. They are phenomenal. Dr. Roberson, it's all yours.
Wow, this was such a powerful show. And I hope that you all appreciated all of this much needed information as much as I did, especially the love story. I also want to acknowledge that I so much enjoy learning about faith-based work that is being led and conducted in our Black churches, because the Black church was born out of our fight for our freedom to have the right to worship, to our health and wellness, and to other issues that are important to the Black community. Thanks for tuning in to our Friday Health Talk of the Week, and I want to thank all of our wonderful guests for an excellent and very informative show. We will be back next Friday to discuss men's health during COVID-19. I'd also like to thank our listeners for tuning in. And remember, listeners, we want to hear from you. We want to invite all of our contact the Far South Chicago Coalition. If you have been influenced by our show or have any comments, please call us, visit our Facebook page, like us, comment about this Facebook, and request a show topic that you would like to learn more about. And last but not least, take our survey and help us to develop our quality of life plan. This show was sponsored by the Health and Mental Wellness Committee of the Far South Chicago Coalition, which is spearheaded by Dr. Joyce. The show content was produced by myself, Dr. Tonya Roberson, and directed and moderated by Mr. Ted Williams III. Have a great weekend.